started. Well, hi everyone and welcome. Thanks so much for joining today. My name is Gianna Calabrese and I'm a program coordinator with Peer System Services. I help coordinate the School-Based Health Center project. My colleague Kelsey Robinson will be here today as well to help monitor this session. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we jump in. Today's session will be recorded, so please just keep your mics on mute unless you have a question. But it would be great if you could ask any questions in the chat box throughout, and then we'll leave some time for open discussion at the end. We would love to see your faces if you're comfortable with your camera on, but no pressure. At the end of the LCS, there will be a post survey that I'll link in the chat box. So if you're an EXCERPT School-Based Health Center participant, please just complete that following the session. A quick background on Dr. Gina Lasky. Dr. Lasky is a licensed psychologist and principal with Health Management Associates Denver office. She works across the county on projects related to behavioral health system design for states, counties, managed healthcare plans, and large providers. Her work focuses on the development of effective population health approaches to meeting the full continuum of behavioral health need. Gina has expertise in the integration of behavioral health and primary care in both directions and works with providers to advance quality improvement and innovation with tools such as measurement-based care, using human-centered design thinking, community-based behavioral health services, and partnership development. So welcome, Gina. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. And good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see some of your faces. As you know, we discussed, it'd be great for people to turn on their cameras, but it's okay if you can't. The goal for today is that we do a little bit of interactive work together. So we're definitely going to ask you guys to participate. It's not just a listen. I have been a provider. I know you guys are having an extraordinary year in terms of a lot of distress out there, right? There's no one in the world that doesn't feeling distress in some way, in some fashion. So I want to share some thoughts about distress tolerance and some quick tips and tools. Some of them may be familiar to many of you. Some of them may be new. They're all things you can do in 5 to 10 minutes and all things that I use every day for myself. And I have definitely learned in this year of COVID that I have to increase my own distress tolerance. So my hope is that they're helpful to you and helpful to the folks that you're working with. And really, as we said, welcome to have you chat in throughout, ask questions, stop me. This is for you, so I want to make it meaningful for you. I'm going to skip past these Zoom pieces. I don't think we need them. I don't see anyone yet who is just by phone. We are going to have a breakout at the end, allow you guys to talk to each other. You all have valuable things to be sharing with one another about your lessons learned this year, about things that you're doing that you feel like are really effective. And if nothing else, it's really important to connect, right? I think we're all tired of Zoom and those kinds of things, but we are all seeking connection, social connection, human connection, shared experience of our day-to-day. And so we want to make sure you have time for that today. Really, the goal is that you come away with a couple of distress tolerance skills that you can use again, that you learn and share with each other and learn from each other and start to build those tool chests from each other's experience, and that you get to experiment with some of the tools. So we're going to start with a brief moment to just reflect, for all of you to reflect. So what I'd like you to do is to do a little bit of mindfulness. Now for this, you can turn your camera off if that's more comfortable. You can look down, you can look away, you can look at this image of the ocean or something else. But what I want you to do is just slow down for a minute. Don't look at your phone, don't look at your computer. Just take a moment and take a couple of deep breaths yourself. So as always, breathing in through your nose, breathing out through your mouth. And just allow yourself in this day to take a step and check in with yourself. You are busy taking care of others and often then ignoring yourself. So take a moment to check in with your own body. as you're thinking about how you're feeling and you're noticing maybe the tension in your neck or you're feeling the seat underneath you, whatever it is that you're thinking about, take a couple of minutes to think about how are you doing in this point in time? How are you doing on this journey in this year of extraordinary pressures? What are a couple words that would describe how you feel? Okay, and now I want you to come back. You can turn your camera back on, open your eyes. Oops, sorry. And what I'd love for people to do is just chat into the chat the 2 words about how you're doing. Just because part of what we really want to do is build connection, right? And we all are experiencing different things, some similar things, and it's always helpful to hear. So if people would be willing to chat into the chat, just the 2 words, 3 words, whatever it was that describe how you're doing. Okay, so hidden, slowed down, hopeful, scattered and tense, fortunate, safe and tired, anxious, stressed, hopeful, thankful, disrupted, stressed, tired, pregnant, stretched and changed, stressed, scattered, calm and hopeful, tired and thankful, it will be okay, safe and thankful, hopeful, fatigued, resilient, stressed. So a lot of themes here, right? We are feeling an enormous amount of stress in our day-to-day. I think we are all also feeling thankful for the things that we've maybe taken for granted in the past, right? We can see things that we're thankful for that are new. And we are all starting to feel some hope, or at least some of us are feeling that hope, but it's a real mixed bag, right? You can feel hope, but there's still that stress and fatigue in the background. I think that is what's normal this year. And I think it's an important thing for us to realize that high distress tolerance is actually normal in 2020. And so I want to talk about some things to manage distress tolerance, but also to normalize it and to share with all of you who do similar work that experience. So I want to do a little bit more reflection, and I think some of you have done this with peer assistance services before, but if you could take out a piece of paper, doesn't have to have lines on it, doesn't have to be a special piece of paper, just take out a piece of paper and spend a minute, I'll give you just a minute, to draw a spiral in the center. And again, it doesn't matter what the spiral look like, it can be tight curves, it can be big curves, doesn't matter. Just take a minute to ground yourself in a spiral on a piece of paper. And then you're going to divide your piece of paper into quadrants. You're just going to draw lines. Again, they don't have to be fancy. Nobody else is going to see this. This is just for you. No requirements around it. Just 4 quadrants where you can write some things. And what you're going to write about is thinking about your experience in supporting students and families, your own colleagues. How are you doing with anxiety and distress this year? So what's your experience been like in trying to support people? And then we're going to talk about 4 different questions around that. So the first one is, what's the progress you've made in supporting people? Okay, I can only see a few folks, so I'm sort of judging by when those few folks look like they're done. The next question is, sometimes it feels impossible to. So when you're thinking about supporting other people around stress, sometimes it feels impossible to. Okay. In the third quadrant, what I want to try next is, what's something you've been thinking about that you want to try, or something you feel like you need to work on? Okay, and then your last one is, what I hope I'll learn is. So the goal with this is just to give you time to reflect and to think about how managing your own stress and managing other people's stress is going, how it's been for you, and how we as professionals start to think about how we're doing on that front. So I'm going to ask you again, just because I think sharing is important, if you could chat in anything you want to. It could be one bullet or one theme about the progress you've made. So just let's share a little bit with each other the progress we've made. Okay, building relationships, staying connected to myself while with others. That's a huge one. Great. More active listening. Okay, all really important in this time. Connecting through tech, patience, having more open conversations, getting better with technology, something we've all been forced to do. Feeling grateful, being grateful. Okay, great. And how about something that feels impossible? What are some of the things that you wrote down about what feels impossible? So it sounds like one of the progresses was also building more trust, relaxed relationships with patients. Good. Re-engaging students again, making progress, making a difference, to keep steady resilience. These are all the things that feel impossible. Lend help about online school. Yeah, that's a hard one. Saying the right thing, meeting everyone's needs, staying positive, looking forward, maintaining the pace. Yeah, it does feel like we are being asked to do things differently. Our skill set has to be different, right? We're no longer just therapists or behavioral health clinicians. We're also technology support people. The problems that people are facing day to day are really enormous. School online, families without enough economic support, all kinds of things. And you guys are talking about that. Ditto to all. Planning for the future, combating the added stress of a pandemic with other adolescent challenges, engaging students during online learning. Yeah. So I hope part of this is that you're feeling connected to one another, that you guys are having very similar experiences. We're not going to necessarily talk about the last two, but I hope that some time like that for reflection is helpful. So what I want to share again is I'm going to talk about a couple of really simple distress tolerance skills. These are some of my favorites. Many of you may use these every day, and I welcome your thoughts about them. You can put them in the chat, or we can share when we do the breakout. lots of you probably have other ideas that I could learn from, that the rest of us could learn from, and that's why we'll do the breakout. So you have some time together to share what you're seeing as being most effective. One of the things I wanted to start with is resisting the writing reflex. So as all of you know, motivational interviewing, right? Our healthcare provider, our good doer selves, we want to fix things. We want to help people. We want to be able to have solutions, answer questions. We want to have the right answer. And we also want to encourage people to do things. And sometimes we get a little bit hung up on that writing reflex and we sort of tell them what to do versus really helping them figure out what they want to do, what's going to be guiding and helpful to them. And it's the real foundation of motivational interviewing, right? That we want to inform and we want to guide, but we don't want to lecture people. We don't want to tell them that they're doing something wrong. The reason I brought this up is not that I think you need that refresher, but I think we all need the reminder this year that we don't have all the answers and that we don't have to get it all right. Because as the pressure mounts for all of us individually and our own stress and anxiety rises, we are more likely to have this triggered. That writing reflex gets really triggered, that you have to be able to have a solution for how to like online school, or you have to be able to have a solution for how to deal with economic stressors in someone's family, or a sense of existential threat that many adolescents and millennials are feeling, right? That we might also be feeling. And so I just want to remind you that you don't have to have that. And I think it's an important thing for you to remind yourselves, and it's an important thing for you to remind your students, right? None of us have the answers right now, and we're all going to do the best we can. And normalizing that is half the battle. So that's just a reminder about our own distress tolerance as we're working on distress tolerance. How many of you, if those of you who have your camera on, you can just nod your head. For other folks, you can put in the chat. How many of you teach diaphragmatic breathing regularly? I see some sort ofs. Always. Great. Great. So some of you do for sure. Some of you aren't so sure. So for those of you who aren't doing it, I would say build this into your repertoire. It's really an incredibly helpful, very easy technique to teach. And you can do it in the moment. You always want to teach people how to do it, and you want to use it in the moment when people are really distressed so that they learn to practice it with you. But this is a great homework for people to do, and for you to assign them to do it at particular times, particularly, you know, if they have times of the day that they're more anxious. So what you want to make sure you do is that you learn how to do it first, right? So we won't have time today to walk through it. Normally I would do it with you. We don't have time to do that today, but what I will say is if you know other people in the chat who said, yes, they use this all the time, get together with them and practice it with them, or practice it with your teammates. There's a zillion YouTube videos to watch. I put one here on the slide. But what you want to do is make sure that you understand how to do belly breathing, right? It's the same as yoga. It's the same as other things. And you want to get used to practicing and teaching it. So you want to, practice with your family members, practice with your spouse, practice with yourself, say it out loud. Just make sure that you've gotten kind of used to how you're going to explain it. And you can probably learn from your colleagues some tricks as well with adolescents about how to do this. But I do this when people are distressed in the moment. So someone's really upset and they're having a hard time settling down. This is a great way to bring their anxiety down. And you can do it in the moment. And it also teaches them that they can bring it down in the moment through their breathing. And then again, I'll have them practice it. So I'll assign it for the week. I want them to practice belly breathing. Maybe they're going to do it before they go to bed at night. Maybe they're going to do it every day when they start class, when they first sign online. They could do it while they're in class. Maybe they're going to do it for the 10 minutes before class starts. Whatever it is, it's a way to help people learn to ground. And then you're going to follow up and check in with them. How did it go? Did they really focus on their deep belly? Did you want to make sure they're not hyperventilating and breathing only in their chest, right? You want to check in and see how it went. But it is a great tool. Not everyone loves it, but it is a good one to have. And it's easy, 5-10 minute teaching. Mindfulness. I imagine many of you have your favorite mindfulness activities. And it's just a reminder that mindfulness is critically important this year. and for distress tolerance, right? It's really an important skill. It's not something that we get taught as kids, but it's absolutely something we all need, right? Learning to ground ourselves in the moment and to take a moment, sometimes even a couple of moments, to be present in that moment and check in with ourselves. Some adolescents, some adults really like particular mindfulness exercises. Some of them hate them. You'll hear a lot of adolescents say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to practice it. Part of it is because it's so foreign for them to slow down and stay in the moment. And so what I try to do is make the ones when I'm working with youth to be somewhat more engaging and fun, give them something to do in the mindfulness rather than just sitting there sort of thinking. Adults are a little bit better at watching their mind or enjoying a peaceful vision, but I usually have them do something. And I like to use videos. You can use, the image of something. You can use sounds. So like listening to birds or listening to the river or whatever, distract them, give them something more than their own heads because this is new for them. The key is that this takes practice. And so I would build it into your sessions as much as you can, because the more you practice it with them, the more likely they are to then practice it on their own. And you'll start to figure out the ones that are most desired by each person you work with. I listed some here. We're going to talk about 5 senses. Watching the mind is one. You might have other favorites. Feel free to chat them in or talk about them in the breakout when you get to talk with each other. This top one, dragging your thumb across your top lip. I don't know how many of you have done this. This is one that adolescents tend to like. It's a little painful. I wouldn't say painful. It's a little strange. It's a little uncomfortable. You just take your thumb, and it helps if you have a nail, and you drag it across the top of your lip slowly enough that you can feel it. And what you have them do is do that and then close their eyes and only focus on the sensation on their lip. And believe it or not, it is a mindfulness technique. It's a distress tolerance, right? You're teaching them to, when they're distressed, to change their focus, to slow down and do something mindful. That one is reasonable because it's sort of odd, right? They think you're kind of funny. They might laugh. That's fine. All that's fine. But it is distracting, and it is something that sensation will last for quite some time. So practice it yourself and then practice it with them. Lots of mindfulness tools and apps out there that can help you too, if you have a hard time thinking about mindfulness. Okay, distress tolerance. These are all adapted DBT skills. So dialectical behavior therapy skills. I don't know how many of you have had that training. If not, you don't have to have had the training to use some of these skills. These are, again, all skills that can be done 10, 15 minutes, some in 5 minutes. So I'm going to share with you some of my favorites that I think are really very helpful that, again, I use. So this is one that you can do in 2 ways. So I'm going to talk about it first as a mindfulness skill. So distress tolerance through your 5 senses. This is a wonderful time for us while we're all at home, while we're all living in this kind of strange world, to pay more attention to our physical senses, right? We have all 5 of them. So one of the mindfulness activities you can do, and again, I do this sometimes when people are really distracted or distressed and I'm trying to get them to calm down, is just a mindfulness exercise around their 5 senses. So right now, we can't all do it together because we're not in the same place, but everyone think about, what are you seeing? Right? So then you ask the person to tell you what they're seeing. And they might say, I see the screen in front of me. They might say, I see the plant behind the screen, whatever it is. What are you seeing? What are you smelling right now? For me, I can smell a little bit of leftover coffee, right? What are you hearing? I hear the hum of my computer. I can hear my spouse speaking in another room. What are you tasting, right? So one of you just ate something. What are you tasting, right? And then what are you feeling? So I feel the chair under myself as I sit here. I feel my feet on the ground. All you're doing is grounding people in the moment with their senses. It's simply a mindfulness exercise, is forcing them to pay attention to their senses instead of to whatever else they were paying attention to. The advantage of this is also teaching, particularly youth, how to pay attention to their bodies, right? Which again, we're not really taught how to do. We don't really notice our bodies. We all as healthcare providers move through the day, often ignoring our bodies, and then later realize, wow, my shoulders are really tense, or my back really hurts, or my legs are really stiff, or I feel like I haven't even stood up in hours. This is a way of grounding yourself, of practicing mindfulness, but also of teaching yourself to check in with your senses, to check in with your body. So you can use it in multiple ways for kids for different challenges. And then you can also use it as an activity for them to practice over the week in terms of finding sensations that are soothing. So soothing through your 5 senses is a really important distress tolerance skill. Again, it's not something that we're necessarily taught, or if we're taught, it's not taught in a way that's as clear that that's what you're doing. But all of us do these things, right? So we know we like warm baths, or we know we like the smell of certain scents, or we know that for me, if I'm very stressed, I like to chew on things. So I like to chew gum, right? That's a sensation that is reducing my stress that I'm now aware of. When I was little, I had no idea, I just did it, right? So you're helping them explore what is soothing through their senses. And I used to do this when I would meet with folks in person in group. I would bring in all kinds of senses. So pine cones and squishy toys, like squishy balls, and ginger chews and wasabi and tea, all kinds of different sensations to get people to experiment with what was distracting. Sometimes distracting is not always soothing, right? So I had patients at Fort Logan who really loved the ginger chews because they were super distracting. They weren't soothing, they didn't particularly like them, but they got so distracted by the chewiness of it that they felt like it was helpful. So you can use this either as a way of distracting or as soothing, or both, but it's really helpful to help people experiment. And it can be kind of fun, particularly with adolescents, to experiment with what do they find distracting, what do they find soothing. Obviously you want to help them think a little bit with appropriateness, right? In terms of what they're trying out. You don't want them to be talking about smoking or some of the other things that they might say. But you can use that as a conversation to get to what are some alternative ways and help them understand how they're actually already moving towards and getting to sensations that they find soothing. So this is a great one to practice with. There's a handout we'll send with the recording that you can use. But I would encourage you to experiment with this and get them to experiment while you're doing Zoom with them, right? Have them find something in their house that they find soothing to hold or soothing to touch, or think about a goal for the week that they're willing to practice. Okay, whoops. So the next one is using something called distraction EXCERPT. And the EXCERPT is just an acronym. If you've done any DBT, there's 10 zillion acronyms and skills. This is one that you probably already do a lot of these. You probably teach people about how to, put their thoughts away, count to 10, read a book, put their thoughts in a drawer, all these different things that we've learned to do over the time. But this is one that can be helpful. Not everybody has to do all of them. So some people really are like comparisons. Some people really like to say, well, at least I'm not, X, at least I'm not living in Afghanistan, or at least I'm not working in Syria, right? My husband used to say those things to me all the time. You want to be careful with this, that you're not invalidating. So the goal is not to tell someone that they shouldn't feel bad right now, but to help them think about comparisons as a way, right? They have safety, they have food, they may dislike they may dislike school and feel bored, but at least they still have school, right? There's ways to think about comparisons. Contributing, having them think about other things that they can be doing for other people as a way of distracting from distress, but also building a sense of, we know that tends to make people's mood better. The activities, really goes back to behavior activation, which I imagine a lot of you are doing, but helping people find pleasurable activities and then helping them practice pleasurable activities every week. So there's if you Google pleasurable activities list, you'll get all of these great lists. Some of them are really funny. If people say, I don't know what I'll enjoy, or I can't think of anything I want to do, that list can conjure up a lot of ideas. And it can also make people laugh because there's some really good funny ones on there. And so thinking about activities, helping people, again, connect the dots between activities and senses, Maybe they really like soothing music. Maybe they really like dance music. And when they play dance music, that's a way for them to distract from anxiety because it makes them dance. These are both pleasurable activities and sense-based soothing activities. The last one I'll just say is, the pushing away. I think, again, some people do well with that, some people don't. So help people practice and experiment with ones. It's not important that they all do all of them. You just want them to see if they can build on that. Then this one, Jennifer put this in the chat already. This is one of my all-time favorites, the half smile. So the half smile is based in neuroscience. So we know that when we half smile, we actually trigger endorphins in our brain and make ourselves feel better, okay? And this is also a really fun skill with adolescents because they always laugh because it's awkward and they feel uncomfortable, and that's just perfect. The laughter is even better. So we'll do this quickly together. What you want to do is just turn the corners of your mouth up, not into a full smile, just into a half smile. And you just do that, right? And many of you might start to laugh because it feels sort of awkward and silly, but almost everybody feels an immediate sensation of pleasure, right? It makes us a little happier. It makes us a little distracted. So this is a mindfulness skill. You can use it as a mindfulness skill, right? They have to be mindful to do it, and it's distracting, but it's also something to practice. So the handout will tell you things like, practice half smiling while you're waiting in line. Practice half smiling while you're waiting in traffic. Practice half smiling for 10 minutes when you wake up. Practice half smiling before you go to bed at night. All you're trying to do is build their repertoire. These are not things that resolve their distress. These are not things that solve their problems, right? These are things that help them learn to live through the moment. We all have an enormous amount of anxiety in COVID. And sometimes we just have to live through the moment. And so that's what you're teaching them, is you're building a tool chest for them of skills to help them make it through the moment. Doesn't mean that you've solved their problems, that they don't still have relationship problems or have had bad experiences in their lives. It doesn't mean that they don't have huge challenges with school. What you're doing is helping them learn to live through that moment. And that's a skill we all need, because none of us are solving our problems every day. We are learning to live with our problems and to manage our distress as we do it, okay? So these are all just quick, easy things. Hopefully that'll be helpful. And again, we'll send the handouts. The other that I imagine you guys do a lot of is problem-solving therapy. This is a really helpful one for when you do have a tangible problem, a social determinant of health, a school-based issue, and you want to help someone think through it. So you follow these 7 steps, and you can, again, do this in 15 minutes. You define the problem, you select an achievable goal, and then you generate multiple solutions. And the key to this one for engagement is at this 3rd step, generating multiple solutions. If you want people to actually work on problem solving, you have to get some humor, and you have to be willing to take any solution, right? So if my problem is that I don't have any money, one of the potential solutions is that I could rob a bank, right? You have to think outside the normal boxes, open up people's minds about brainstorming, let them feel some creativity and freedom to explore it, but also get them laughing, right? Our problems are overwhelming. If we can laugh about it, then we can start to get a little bit more creative. And also sometimes that creativity, you do stumble on something that really is going to work that maybe they couldn't think about when you are too tied up in our analytical minds. You want to weigh the pros and cons, select a feasible solution, and then you're going to try it. And then you're always going to come back and evaluate it. So you're not going to assume that you're going to get it right the first time out of the bank. First time out of the gate. You're going to try it, and then you're going to come back later and see how it worked. So this is an example of doing that for money. So I don't have enough money. The realistic goals, I need to make $50 a week. Right, you have to help them set realistic goals because they might say something unrealistic. So you have to help them pick something realistic. And then you create that list, right? I can borrow from my friends or family. I can get a job. I can spend less. I could rob a bank. I can sell some of my artwork. Who knows? Get creative. Discuss the pros and cons of those. select one, then talk about the plan, talk about some of the barriers to those plans, and then check back in and see how it went, and then keep going. So I think that I attached a handout for this. If I didn't, I'm happy to give you a handout that walks you through the steps that you can also use with folks. You can do this in Zoom on the whiteboard together to draw it out, but it's a helpful skill to teach people. Again, you don't have to get it right. It's not that you're going to solve every problem, but you're going to be teaching people how to think through problem solving. Okay. Any chats, questions in the chat quickly before we move on to a breakout? Okay, we'll have some time to come back together at the end. What we're going to do now is break into groups. It looks to me like everyone is, let me just check quickly. It looks like everyone is connected in a way that the breakouts will work. So we're gonna, if I assume most of you have done breakouts, if you haven't, you're gonna get sent into another room that looks like this with fewer people, and you'll be unmuted, and you'll have an opportunity to talk to each other. And what you wanna talk about, again, you're not, this isn't rigid, you're not tied to it, but what are other ideas you're using to manage distress? That could be for yourself or things that you're teaching people. And what are the skills that you think have been most beneficial? So what are your tricks? What are your secret tools that you use that you can share with each other, and just have a chance to get to know each other and to share some experience, because we are all having the same kind of experience. We'll send you out into a breakout. You'll notice that you'll get a little warning that you'll have about a minute left. We're going to give you 10 minutes, and then we'll come back together and we'll talk about what you learned from one another, and we'll have some time to talk about some of the skills and any other comments people want to share. Okay. If you guys have trouble in your breakout, you can send a message back to the hosts. We'll get a message from you. You can also leave the breakout room and come back. You let us know if you have challenges. All right. I think we're ready to go.
All right.
I would encourage you all to turn on your cameras in the breakout. It's just nicer if you get to see each other.
All right. So now everyone should get a request to join.
Yep, looks like people are leaving. For those of you who are still here, you might have to hit the join, the link that pops up. It'll say join breakout. There you go. These two folks maybe have stepped away. Oh, there we go.
Nice.
Nice. There you go.
Great. Yeah, I noticed a couple might have popped off right before, so I just moved some people around.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, isn't it? They all vanish.
Yeah.
How do you think it's going so far?
Wonderful. Oh, it looks like Colleen is back.
Oh, Colleen, did you have some trouble with the breakout? So I was trying to see, since I'm not co-host, I can't see it, but what I was thinking is we could put in the chat the question, put in a message, broadcast a message out with the questions in it.
Okay, yes. Let me do that. Oops. All right. Okay, just sent a message to everybody.
Great. Yeah, I just realized I probably could have slowed down the reflection part a little bit. I was
Here, I
thinking
can
maybe
actually
I ran out of
pause
time.
I can pause the recording. Will that mess anything up?
Sure.
No.
Okay.
Time is up for the 9-minute breakout room. Want me to close all the rooms now?
I'm sorry, say that again.
The time is up. Do you want me to close them now?
Yeah.
Great. Now they have 60 seconds. Sorry.
Yep, that's good. Oh, some of them are coming back.
Yeah.
Welcome back. It's a little bit like watching popcorn, right? All the photos come back. I love it.
I know, it's funny. Just popping back in.
Maybe there's a couple more groups.
Yeah, we have about half so far.
Great. Everyone's back. So now we just have some time for discussion, questions. I would love to hear, what were some of the ideas that you learned from each other and how was the breakout? Anyone wants to share?
Hey, it's Rebecca. I don't mind sharing. So it was really nice to actually meet the other participants in our breakout room. We had some really great discussion other than the questions, but we did answer the questions, just talking about school-based health and how things are going with all of the COVID stuff. But some of the ideas were deep breathing, active listening skills, teaching the students or the kids to actually do some type of mindfulness with their hands or use a fidget to actually keep them engaged and help them focus more. But it was really great.
Great. And I'm so glad you connected in other ways. That was one of the goals. So
Yeah.
Good. Anyone else want to share?
I'll share. This is Jen in Montrose. Deb Archer and I were talking, and we shared some of the same strategies, and she had one, and she might chime in, that I thought was really interesting about using a sequence of numbers to kind of reset during a panic attack. And I think she'd be better at explaining it but it sounded really interesting and something that would work well with adolescents. But it kind of in general, just the importance of practicing whatever the skill is when the adolescent's feeling okay, so that it's accessible and they are able to implement it when they need it. But the other, she had an app that she liked, but I don't want to steal her thunder if she wants to share.
That's okay, either way. But the app that we were talking about was Calm Harm. And I tell the kids when I show it to them, its intention is for those that like cut and stuff, but it can be any type of distraction. And you just basically go in there and it gives you a whole menu of stuff to pick from. And so really it's kind of like mindfulness distraction. You can pick from this buffet of things to do. And the whole point of self-harm was if you can ride the wave, the urge will pass usually within 5 to 15 minutes. And so this is just kind of a distraction app to get your mind going someplace positive instead of the other. Breathing's on there with a dot you can follow. There's lots of good stuff. And I tell the kids you can use it for anything, even for just breaking any bad habit you want to, or just to get kind of out of your head, out of your funk. And as far as the panic attack shutting down, that was in one of my therapy internships. Came from military training that if somebody is going into a panic attack or starting, if you can help them stop and say 5 non-sequential numbers, that a lot of times that will shut it down. It's something about the brain has to stop to come up with those numbers, and you kind of get a reset on that. So that's just something. And one thing Jen shared that I'm going to look up is face yoga, which sounds like it kind of takes the point of that half smile and goes even further. And she said it's great at relieving that tension in the neck and everything. And is another thing that makes teens laugh sometimes. So I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, just to find it, I was at a nap conference many years ago, and you basically anchor your feet on the ground and check your range of motion of head turn. And then you go through these ridiculous facial movements of sticking out your tongue as far as you can and different things. And then you recheck your range of motion, and it's pretty incredible how much release you get in these muscles through the neck. There's a lot on face yoga for like anti-aging and stuff, but I haven't. If I find the link, I will share it with Gianni.
Great ideas. Anyone else want to make a comment? Share ideas? Was it helpful for you guys to have more time together in breakouts? Something you'd want to do more of? I see some head nodding.
It really helps connect. You know, I think we're getting more isolated as providers too with all this COVID stuff, and just the quarantining. If we're not quarantining, if we haven't been caught in that at least once, then, you know, you're having to distance, you're having to do all this. This just kind of breaks through that a little bit and reminds us that we're in the trenches together when it seems like we're in our own individual trench sometimes.
Yeah. Nicely said, Deb. All right, we have a couple more minutes if anyone wants to share any more ideas that you heard from one another, or any other resources that you want to share. I can put in the chat. Actually, I don't think I can. Actually, I'll do this. There are 2 slides that I didn't do for the sake of time. So let me unhide. One of them is behavior activation and the pleasurable activity list. So I'll just show you those quickly. How many of you are doing behavior activation as part of your work? Yes, no? No, okay. So behavior activation is another, oopsies, evidence-based, really great tool that's easy to teach people. Very evidence-based for treating depression, but can work for anxiety and some other things. It's generally 6 to 12 sessions, but the point of behavior activation is that you create a list of pleasurable activities for patients. You're just trying to activate them to do things, to try things, right? And so that's why it's so important for depression, but you know, equally as important for other things. So you help people select an activity that they're willing to try. Again, you have to really work with people to set a goal. So some people will say things like, I'm going to run a marathon. Well, no, let's start with, are they walking around the block yet? You know, I had one woman that I worked with who wouldn't leave her living room. So the first step was getting her to go to her porch, right? So you have to really help people narrow it down to a realistic goal that they're willing to take in that next week. And you, more than anything, want them to come up with the activity. You can give them ideas. The pleasurable activity list, which I'll show you in a second, you can pull offline. I give it to people, especially for you guys in busy clinics, give it to them to look at for 10 minutes while you go talk to somebody else, you know, and it gives them something to do while they're waiting for you to come back, but it also forces them to think about what's going to be the pleasurable activity that's helpful to them. And then you want them to set the goal for the week, and you want to check in with them about the barriers. What are the potential barriers? So I want to walk around my block, but I don't have any shoes, or I really want to do crafts, but I don't know how to get to the craft store. Whatever it is, help them think about the barriers, help them break those down so that you make it more likely that they're going to do it. And then you're going to set the goal for the next week, and then you're going to check in. The most important thing is this accountability. And I know I've said it a couple times for the distress tolerance. If you're teaching these skills, but you're never following up on them, you're unlikely to see a lot of progress. So it's vital that you check back in, right? How did that go? If they hated it, great, that's good intel for you and them. If they liked it, then keep building on that. But you want to make sure you're accountable and that you're going to tell them you're accountable. So next week, I'm going to ask you whether or not you walked around the block and how that went. And then you're going to talk about what they liked and what they didn't with it. So the behavior activation is as simple as that. It's 6 to 12 sessions generally for someone with mild to moderate depression. And what it shows is that you activate them. In that short period of time, using this technique over and over, you can literally activate them. This is just, it's hard to see on here, but this is one of those online 172 fun activities catalog, right? And there's a lot of crazy stuff on here. People will start to laugh at some of them, you know, it's a long list of different things, but it does get people's minds going about, well, maybe I should try this, or I've always wanted to knit, I've never done it, or I've always wanted to paint, but I've never done it, or whatever it is. But it gets them unstuck from, I don't know, and nothing is fun, which, you know, we all hear a lot. Nothing is fun. And, you know, nothing is particularly fun at the moment, but we can still find new things. So I think we're at time. I just want to thank you all so much for your work, for your dedication. And I know this year is particularly challenging. And I'm really glad you guys all had a chance to connect. It was a pleasure to meet you, pleasure to hear some of the new skills that are good for me to have from all of you. And I hope you get some more chances to connect with each other. Please take good care of yourselves, check in with yourselves, do your face yoga. I love that idea. Manage your own distress as well, and take time for some mindfulness. And thank you again for joining.
Thank you everyone so much for joining, and thank you Gina for this wonderful LCS. I'm going to repost the post survey in the chat box in case you guys missed it a little bit.
Oh, sorry. I'm
No,
so
that's
sorry.
okay.
Let me put it up.
Oh yes, the last slide. So yeah, if you could all please complete the survey when you have a chance today, that would be great. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Reach out if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you.